This is truly a historical day, not least because we're convened here in this very modern building that is Dáil Éireann for today, and because we're voting on the election of Taoiseach. While this is a historical occasion, there is nothing normal about it. We know the election of a Taoiseach is not just about electing an individual, it's about a programme for government, but also about the beliefs and ideologies and about passions and views that deliver for those of us that are honoured to have been elected. Across this House, we hold different beliefs and views. We are a reflection of the choices that were made by over 2.2 million people who turned out on the 8th of February in the general election. And despite some of the political commentary since, often by people who've never knocked on a single door, never let alone knocked on thousands of doors. The majority of the doors I knocked on, or my party colleagues knocked on, could not have been clearer. They simply didn't want more of the same. This is a changing Ireland, and the broken record has to change too. And so I and my party and everyone else here today has to ask themselves, what is it they want to see happen in Ireland over the next 5 years? Is this programme for government the prescription needed to ensure a fair society that is underpinned by good public services, a strong economy that is rebuilt and works for all? And are the measures included sufficient to tackle the urgent climate challenges of this pivotal decade? Not to be cliched, democracy matters. How many times have you heard a politician say the only poll that matters is the poll on election day? Well, we had that poll on the 8th of February. We all knocked on the doors the length and breadth of the country. We heard the same message over and over again. There was a desire for fundamental change. Indeed, that message was acknowledged by the Taoiseach, Leo Varadkar, when he said he intended to lead his party into opposition. This was not about protest. This was a very determined message. While COVID-19 has intervened in all of our lives since the election, with tragic consequences for some who have lost their lives, we again remember them and we sympathise with them and their families. And again we remember those who worked and work on the front lines. And again we say thank you. If anything, the COVID crisis has amplified so many of the issues where there are chronic failures in housing, health, childcare, disability services, and so many more. We in the Social Democrats have been criticised from various sides regarding our decision not to participate in this coalition. But we can and we will robustly defend our position. We were not given a mandate to deliver more of the same, and we were not given a mandate to make up the numbers. We put ourselves in front of the electorate based on a social democratic manifesto which is about delivering a new approach, including much improved public services that are available to all and a more equal and just society. Then COVID hit and further exposed the significant weaknesses in both our society and our economy. And if anything, underlining was required. It further underlined our belief that a social democratic approach to public policy is the best way to create the type of Ireland that the people we spoke to on the doors want. While it is fair to say that details of all our general election manifestos are not valid today because of COVID, what is valid is the general approach to how we're governed and the underpinning ideologies. One approach intervenes to ensure the state delivers public services to all and a floor below which no one is permitted to fall. The opposite approach relies heavily on the market to deliver public services, and at the same time that same market determines workers' income levels, and it's a less equal society that is delivered. That is why, when it came to coalition negotiations, we focused on the economic foundations underpinning first the framework document and then the subsequent programme for government. So many of the promises made in the 2016 programme for government were not delivered. despite by and large having been written by many of the same protagonists responsible for today's programme. That is why the financial underpinning is important. The shame of growing rates of homelessness, including thousands of children, the health service where hundreds of thousands of men, women and children are on waiting lists for treatment, together with emergency rooms that are full of sick people on trolleys that are cared for by exhausted medics. These outcomes were not accidents. They're a product of policy, and policy is about ideology. It is why the message on so many doorsteps was about change. Ideology is not a dirty word, but it was how it was perceived by the last government, particularly around the critical issue of housing. How could ideas and ideals underpinning decisions that affect all of our lives be considered as such? Social democracy is about collectivism. It's about universalism. You pay your taxes, but you get the services you pay for. While markets exist for trade, goods and services, public services are public goods. Health, education, childcare are examples of services that should be publicly provided to a high standard and accessible to all. As we said during the election, you never get everything you want when you're negotiating a programme for government. But the very least you should ensure is the front of the train and the back of the train are not ideologically pulling in opposite directions. The economic and societal recovery from COVID has to be fair, and there has to be a constructive rebuilding. In doing that, it must also address the challenges of key areas where crises predated COVID. More of the same won't achieve that. The right to free collective bargaining in the workplace is, for example, not a part of the programme for government, yet it is an essential part of delivering fairer incomes. Without that, there will be high levels of low income and poverty, and the public purse will be called upon to subsidise low pay. It is not just a question of name-checking in the programme for government. There are things in this programme, and I acknowledge that are good, that are progressive, and there are things that should be supported, but they have to be delivered. Holding government to account will be part of ensuring that. Ultimately, the question that I and my party colleagues had to satisfy ourselves on, in 5 years' time, can we honestly knock on doors in an Ireland that continues to have a crisis in housing and homelessness, a two-tier health service, an entire generation locked out of ordinary life choices like affordable home, secure employment, childcare that doesn't bankrupt them, where the work-life balance is such that it negatively impacts on their quality of lives? Could we look people in the eye and say that we had presided over a programme for government that we believed was ideologically the wrong approach, or was simply never economically sound to begin with? The Social Democrats will continue to work, as we did in the last Dáil, by being constructive and being practical, but also not afraid to ask the hard questions and hold government to account. We will support you in every measure that we believe will deliver a social democratic solution to problems, and we will be forceful in rejecting any measures that are regressive or seek to impose an uneven recovery or austerity on ordinary households as we emerge from this COVID crisis. The acceptance by Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and the Green Party of the programme for government is an indication of the outcome of the vote that will be taken shortly. I fully expect that Micheál Martin will be elected Taoiseach, and while it's not the government that we want, on a personal level, I want to congratulate you in advance, because there won't be an opportunity for me to do so afterwards. Those of us in politics understand what it takes, both personally and professionally, to sustain a decades-long career in politics, to lead your party and to eventually end up in the office of Taoiseach. And we will recognise, and so we recognise that today is a momentous day for you and for your family, and we wish you and your family plenty of joy on this day and on this occasion. Thank you.